To Kenya and see the updates on the stories that we have been following for a while now. The first autopsies on Monday on corpses found in mass graves linked to the Kenyan pastor suspected of inciting followers to fast to death confirmed starvation as the cause of death, although some victims were asphyxiated. Now, experts carrying out the first post-mortems on more than 100 bodies unearthed in a coastal forest examined 9 children aged 1 to 10 as well as 1 woman.
The chief government pathologist, Johansen Odua, says most of the victims had features of starvation after the autopsies took place in a hospital morgue in the town of Malindi. In a case that erupted last month, horrifying a deeply religious nation, cult leader Paul Mackenzie Tenje is accused of urging followers to find God through starvation. And, I have questioned, all of this personally. And I think I even got to ask myself, what is a thing that your spiritual father, religious father, daddy G.O., mommy G.O. is going to ask of you in order to see God or to, and to go to heaven, and you will tell them no?
I think that people who are overly religious, extremists, don't know where to draw the line. But my own concern when I read this story basically was, I know that there's been a debate about, the government, checking the activities, regulating the activities of religious bodies and all, but isn't there a line? Isn't there boundaries that shouldn't be crossed? I think in 2019, this same man was arrested after 2 children died of starvation. And then he was released on a bond of I don't know how much. And you know that this happened. You didn't investigate. You arrested him, quite all right, but you let him go, right? There's only, it was only a matter of time before we saw these kind of situations.
Well, here's the thing, what would you describe as a crime enough to either stop a religious body from practicing or arrest its pastor? Because these things can still be deemed free will. Nobody is being forced. Nobody is being, basically forced. And so he can simply claim that people acted, with their own free will. If you remember when this story broke, I remember that a couple of people that were rescued, that were found in the mountain region and were rescued before they died, refused to eat, because they still were saying to themselves that their spiritual father or their pastor had told them that they should starve to death. And they refused to still eat, even after being rescued. So he can simply claim, they all acted, on their own free will.
Okay,
and so at that point, the government or the police can't
So
act.
let's say they can't hold them, on account of the fact that they acted on free will. But I'm saying that there should be a level of monitoring, seeing how such has happened before. Before all of these bodies were unearthed, right? You hear stories of families that the mother just wakes up one morning and takes her passport and takes a flight, Those activities should have been monitored. This farmland, I don't know if it's this exact one, but news making rounds on social media says a very successful aviation worker, beautiful, donated her land for these kind of things. I think that all of those things should have been checked.
Once again, if it's not breaking any laws and it is being done, through the person's free will, you can't accuse them of anything or check anything. If I get home, if I was married, or if you were married, or if we were married.
What is wrong with you?
And then you get home someday. I'm your husband. We've been married for 5 years. We have 2 kids. And then you get home someday after work and realize that I have taken, our property documents, our cars, and taken them to the church, and donated them to the church. What are you going to tell the police? Nothing.
Well, but if death is involved, of children?
So it's a different case if, the actions of these people are, likely to cause harm to the public or cause harm to other people. But if it is a self-imposed, if it's an action that I'm taking for my own free will because I believe in what my pastor said, you can't accuse anybody of anything or really stop anything. You can only advise people against it. I'm shocked that people would actually hold their breath or stop eating until they die. I'm shocked at the level of indoctrination and the level of extremism that people can get to. But it's, once again, not different from any other person who wears a suicide vest and goes into a crowded place to blow themselves up. It's the exact same thing. It's that level of extremism that you would, you don't mind losing your life because your religion or because your religious, body or father told you so. And so I feel like the one of the things, yes, I understand there should be some level of regulation with religious bodies, but there's only so much that the government can do. But I feel like another thing is there have to be more conversations, that reduce the grip and the hold that Africans have on religion.
Yeah.
It cannot be this bad. I understand, yes, it comes from, there are many, many reasons, the foundation, or the reasons where the Africans have this grip on religion, or religion has this grip on Africans, rather. But that's what I feel needs to start being worked on. This grip, it feels like we're in a chokehold,
yeah.
with religion.
And another thing that baffles me, right? Africans are not, well, we're not exactly known to be so inquisitive, but in a situation where someone is asking you to fast and you're seeing people dying and the person is not dying, at least ask questions like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you still alive? Why are you not seeing Jesus yet?
So I feel like, there will be further investigations. People would be called as witnesses. There would be questions, to find out exactly how all of this played out. How many times did he preach this message? If he is, these are still accusations. So, at this point, I think it's fair to say that, he's still being accused of, he's not been found guilty as allegations, So I'm hoping that the Kenyan government does all it possibly can to understand exactly what happened and how this played out, because it's not the first time that we've heard of things like this. I've said it before that in history, in the 70s, I think there was, in the 90s or the 80s, there was the Jonestown massacre, there was the Heaven's Gate, which are some of the most popular ones across the world, where almost 900 people, were killed in a church. Or the same process, the same spiritual father said that we should all enter this church and kill ourselves. Or there's one of them where he took his whole congregation church and burnt them.
Yeah, and set it
There's
alight,
one where he asked them to take, poison. So these things have happened in history before. It just makes me question what grip religion should have, what level of extremism that you have with your religion, that you now become a dangerous person, not just to yourself, but to society. And those are the things that we need to start reducing. But the continent is an interesting place to live, and it's gonna be pretty hard. And I'll just mention that the Jonestown and Heaven's Gate didn't happen in Africa, so it's not just in Africa that you have
it's not an African mentality. Yeah, there's brainwashing everywhere, really.
But we will encourage the Kenyan government and, of course, that region, whoever's in charge of that region, to make sure that they have a proper investigation. I'm hoping that the numbers stop. Sometime last week we were at 90 or 73, and then we're at 90, and then now we're at 110. I'm hoping that it stops. I'm hoping that they do not, in the next couple of days, say that they found another mass grave.
Looking at how long it lasted, Osage, there's no guarantee that the numbers will stop.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee.
Insane. Well, those are the latest from the Shakahola forest in Kenya, where, of course, Pastor Paul Mackenzie and his followers, of course, are creating some of the biggest stories in the continent. Unfortunately, really sad stories. Stay with us. We'll move into the world of sports and see what the latest is over there. That comes up right next.